Am I the asshole for not stopping the hospital director from reading my credentials out loud after my dad told 50 guests my sister was the only child who made him proud?
Welcome to Popcornrest in this story. Today's story is about a nurse who was publicly dismissed by her own family only for everything to flipping one unforgettable night. That is both hidden favoritism, shock and froth, and unexpected volitions. Let's get started.
My dad stood up at my graduation party last Saturday, tapped his glass, and waited for the room to go quiet. I was sitting at table 6, the table in the corner, furthest from the front, closest to the kitchen door. I had found my name card when we arrived and understood the assignment immediately. I thought, okay, maybe this is the speech where things are different. It was not that speech. I'm 22. I'm a nurse. I graduated with a 3.98 GPA at the top of my class last month, and I start my first job at the end of the week. My family has been producing lawyers for 3 generations. My dad is a well-regarded attorney. My grandfather was a well-regarded attorney. The expectation, communicated to me from roughly the age of 8, was that I would be a well-regarded attorney too. When I was 17, I told my parents I wanted to study nursing. My dad said nurses were doctors' assistants, and he hadn't raised me to serve someone else's career. My mom said something similar in different words. I went to nursing school anyway, and I paid for it myself every semester, working part-time on top of my coursework, taking out loans for what I couldn't cover. My parents attended 0 of my classes or clinical rotations or competitions. They attended 0 of my ceremonies. They asked about my studies approximately never that my sister Olivia is 19 and she is studying pre-law, and she has been accepted to Harvard Law School, and she is. I say this without bitterness because it is simply the factual situation. The center of my family's universe, the one person who has been consistently, reliably, genuinely present for me is my grandmother Eleanor. She was a nurse for 40 years. She understood what I was doing and why, and she showed up for it. My mom organized the graduation party. She booked a private room at a restaurant called the Sterling, which is the kind of place you go when you want people to know you go to places like the Sterling. She invited 50 guests. The guests were my dad's business partners, my dad's colleagues, a few family friends, and my sister's social circle. There was a banner on the wall when we arrived. It said, "Celebrating the Torres families." My name was not on it. I found my seat at table 6, and I ate my salad, and I watched the room fill with people I barely knew, most of whom were there to network with my father and had not been informed that there was a nursing graduate in the room worth speaking to. My grandmother sat next to me. She held my hand for a moment when we sat down and didn't say anything, which was the right call. That my dad stood up about an hour in. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about the family legacy, about what it meant to practice law, about the privilege of building something across generations. He talked for several minutes. Then he said he had an announcement. He said his daughter Olivia had been accepted to Harvard Law School. The room applauded. He said he was overwhelmed with pride. He said Olivia represented everything the family had built. And then he said, and I want to be accurate, because this is the sentence I have been replaying since Saturday. He said, "I only wish Olivia was the one holding a diploma tonight. She's the only child who truly makes me proud." 50. People heard that. I was sitting 12 feet. Away's my grandmother stood up as she is, 71 years old, and she has the posture of someone who spent for decades moving through hospital wards with authority. She stood up and she said what needed to be said, clearly and without raising her voice, about what my father had just done in front of his colleagues and what it said about him as a man and as a parent. The room was very quiet, and then the door opened. A man I had never met walked in. He introduced himself as Dr. Webb. He said he was the director of recruitment at Presbyterian Memorial Hospital, and he apologized for arriving late. He said he had wanted to deliver something in person. He handed me a letter. Then he asked if he could say a few words. I said yes. He said Presbyterian Memorial would like to offer me a position in their emergency department. He said the starting salary was $78,000 a year. He said my application had been one of the strongest his team had reviewed in recent memories. Then he pulled out a second letter. He said the dean of my nursing school had asked him to read it aloud on her behalf. That the letter said I was the most academically accomplished nursing graduate the school had produced in 15 years. It said I had been nominated for a national program called the Future Medical Leaders Initiative, which accepts the top 1% of nursing graduates in the country each year. It said I had earned this through for years of work that the dean described in writing. As exceptional, she read all of it. The room was looking at me, my dad's colleague, Mr. Harris, a senior partner whose name I recognized from conversations I had overheard, stood up and looked at my father and said he thought an apology was in order. That my dad said nothing. A.M. I the asshole for letting it happen. I did not invite Dr. Webb. I did not ask him to read the letter. I did not know he was coming. But I also did not stop him. And I want to know whether I should have. I keep thinking about the banner that didn't have my name on it. About table 6. About the only child who truly makes me proud said in front of 50 people with me sitting 12 feet away to long. Didn't read 3 generations of lawyers. I became a nurse. My mom threw a graduation party where the banner didn't include my name. I was seated in the corner. And my dad's speech was about my sister's Harvard Law acceptance. He said she was the only child who made him proud. My grandma stood up and said something. Then a hospital director I'd never met walked in and offered me a job paying more than first-year lawyers at my dad's firm. Then read a letter from my dean calling me the most outstanding nursing student in 15 years. A senior partner in my dad's firm told him to apologize. He didn't. Am I the asshole for not stopping any of it? Edit. My grandmother just texted me. She said, I may have made a call or two. I'm going to need a minute or two. Dr. Webb was not a coincidence. I'll explain in the update. Going to sleep first.
Well, honestly, this story hits in a uncomfortable way. It feels like one of those moments where success and recognition don't land where they are supposed to, and instead gets filtered through family expectations and favoritism. And what's the annoying most isn't even the relations or the chop offer. It's the emotional silence around the table. Like you were physically resents but already excluded from the narrative they were trying to build. And there's something almost tense about how everything escalates at their sparring. Their bench, their comparisons with your sister, your friend mother stepping in, and then suddenly a completely unassessed professional interventions. And then suddenly a completely unexpected professional interventions is felt too coordinated to be random, especially with that final edit, hearing your friend mother miss a call. It makes me wonder if this wasn't just a moment of humiliations followed by validations, but actually a setup for something bigger. Like your grandmother playing a public corrections of their story your father was telling. And if that's true, the next part is going to completely flip how family sees you, or T is apart entirely.
Update 1. For days later, I'll explain Dr. Webb's my grandmother has been a nurse for 40 years. In that time, she has worked with a significant number of people who have gone on to significant positions in healthcare administration. She has apparently maintained those relationships. 6 months ago, she reached out to Dr. Webb. She told him about me, my coursework, my clinical record, my GPA, my trajectory. She told him she believed that would be an asset to any institution that was serious about emergency medicine. She asked if Presbyterian Memorial would be interested. He was interested. She did not tell me any of this. She did not tell me she had contacted him, that he had reviewed my file, that he had decided to attend the party in person rather than send a letter because she had told him about the kind of evening T was likely to be. She just prepared and waited. I called her the morning after the party, and she explained it the way she explains most things, concisely, without making a production of it. She said she had watched my family dismiss me for 4 years, and she had decided, some time ago, that she was going to do something about it when the moment was right. She said the moment seemed right. Pat, after the party, my mom called me. She said that my dad's reputation at the firm was being affected, that some of his colleagues had said things that were uncomfortable, that a client had requested to work with a different partner. She said I needed to come and speak to his partners and explain that the evening had been misunderstood. I told her I didn't think the evening had been misunderstood. She said I was being difficult. I said I was done managing the consequences of things I hadn't caused. She said if I really loved my family, I would help. I said goodbye and hung up. That my sister Olivia texted me the day after the party. She asked if she could call. I said yes. She said she had been sitting at the table listening to our dad's speech and she had felt sick. She said she didn't know what to do in the moment and she was ashamed that she hadn't done anything. She said she had benefited for years from the Way our parents organized themselves, and that she had told herself it was just how. Families work, but that what happened. At the party had made her see it clearly in a way she hadn't before. She said she was sorry. I told her I heard her. I told her that the apology mattered and that I needed time, and that if she meant it, she would show me by how she acted going forward. And not just by what she said in one phone call. She said she understood. We've talked twice since. Then, carefully, getting less careful.
So, after reading the update, it kind of feels like the story is no longer sitting in that awkward family drama space anymore. It's turning into something more stretching. Almost like actions that were playing a long time ago are now finally showing their impact. And what's really stand out is how differently everyone is reacting after the party. The mother suddenly trying to repair the image, the sister sifting from silence to gaze and reflections, and the red mother, I say she doesn't feels like a background character anymore. She feels like someone who already know how this would unfold and just won and just waited for the right moment to let it out. And that's careful than less careful way of talking with the sister. That usually doesn't stay stable for long. It feels like something is about to be said that changes the directions of everything we've seen so far. So now let's move to Affect 2.
Update to a final I started at Presbyterian Memorial last week. The emergency department is loud and fast, and exactly what I trained for. My first shift as senior nurse pulled me aside after we'd handled a complicated intake together and said I had good instincts. She said it like it was a fact, not a compliment. That's the kind of feedback that actually means something. I moved out of my parents' house 3 weeks ago. I have a small apartment. I have a closet I organize myself in, a kitchen where I cook on Sunday mornings, and a bed that I sleep well in. Which is something I didn't realize I had stopped doing until I started again. My dad has not apologized. I don't think he's going to. I've stopped expecting it, which is different from accepting that it was okay. It was not okay. I know what it cost me to sit at that table in that corner and hear those words in front of those people. I don't need him to confirm it by apologizing for me to understand it clearly. His reputation at the firm has taken some damage. A client reassignment here, a cooler reception there. I have not done anything to cause this. I have not spoken to his colleagues or made statements or sought any of it out. What happened is that 50 people watched a father publicly declare that one daughter was worthless, and then watched a hospital director show up and contradict him with documentation. That people drew their own conclusions that my mom calls occasionally. The calls are short. She wants things from them that I'm not providing, which makes them shorter. That my grandmother and I have dinner on the first Sunday of every month. She picks the restaurant. She has strong opinions about restaurants. That last Sunday she ordered for both of us, and then she said, I would have done it anyway, even if it had gone badly. I asked what she meant. She said she had made the call to Dr. Webb knowing it might not land. That things don't always land when you want them to. That she had done it because it was true, because I had earned it, and because true things should be said out loud regardless of whether the timing is convenient. I thought about that for a while. I thought about my dad's speech and the banner with my name missing in table 6. I thought about Dr. Webb walking through that door and reading the deans. Led into a room that had just been told I was the family's disappointment. True, things should be said out loud that my grandmother has been saying that in various ways my whole life. I'm only now fully understanding it. Not the asshole, obviously, but the question I needed to answer for myself wasn't whether I was the asshole. It was whether I was going to keep sitting at table 6 and waiting to be seen. I have an apartment now. I have a job I love. I have a grandmother who calls in favors she's been cultivating for 40 years and doesn't mention it until she needs to. I'm not at table 6 anymore. Too long. Didn't read. My grandma made the call to Dr. Webb 6 months ago, using her network from 40 years in nursing. She didn't tell me. She just prepared and waited for the right moment. Dad's reputation at the firm has taken damage. Client reassignment, cooler reception. He hasn't apologized. Mom calls wanting things I'm not providing. Olivia and I have talked twice, carefully, getting less careful. Started at Presbyterian Memorial last week. Senior nurse said I have good instincts. Moved to my own apartment. Dinner with my grandma first Sunday of every month. She picks the restaurant, not the asshole.
There's any kind of peace in a quiet but heavy way. Like, when you realize a situation you've been emotionally stuck in was never really balanced to begin with. As someone listened to this story, you almost feel a mix of frustration, disbelief, and this uncomfortable sadness that builds up slowly rather than suddenly. At first, it sounds like a typical family drama as a Revelations, but the more it unfolds, the more it feels like a long-standing pattern finally being exposed in public. And honestly, there's something a bit shocking about how normalized it all was inside the family. I see it at table 6, the missing name on the banner. The speech that reduced one child and elevated another like is what just standards procedure. What's really lingers in the Ram-masked world, it doesn't like loud or dramatic, but almost intentional, in a calm and sudden way, like she waited for reality to correct itself at the exact right moment. And by the end, you don't really feel like dizzy about winning or losing anymore. It's more like a strength relief mixed with this then. Watching someone finally step out of their space where they were constantly being measured against expectations. Were never fair to begin with. So let me know what you guys think about this one, because I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to Book Come Remember This Story, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!